Should you take over the family business? And if so, what do you need to know before so you make sure that there is a clear and smooth transition? My name is Marco Sander. I'm a German psychologist. I'm coaching entrepreneurs and business owners, and I also do have quite some experience with people who are taking over the business of the last generation of their parents, of their father, usually statistically speaking, and how to transition properly, that it also feels good for you and you have a feeling of this is a business that I am running, I am passionate about it, and I feel like we have a clear and great communication with the other family members being involved in the family business. Now, I will share a couple of examples. I took some notes, so I will also look at my notes for a little bit. I want to share examples. I want to also tell you, first of all, that your situation is not special. There are millions of people out there who take over the family business. It's quite a normal thing. And there are quite some people who are doing it very right and very great. And there are some people who are not prepared. And that's actually the biggest problem. So if you take over the business, and that's first of all the decision you need to make, whether you want to do it or not. But if you want to take over the business, what you need to do is that you need to make sure that there's a deliberate transition and there needs to be a preparation. And this is often not the case. People just bump into something, and it's much more difficult to rearrange that post hoc, going back and like, wait, we need to talk about some stuff. It's much easier to do that up front. And a lot of people I talk to, they, until the point that we started working together, just silently suffered. And I want to share a couple of examples, 3 examples. There are many more, but just so you get a little bit of an idea of how it is for other people. I talked to one person who, he even regretted at that point that he took over the business. And the problem was that he never set boundaries with his father. Also, officially, he also already has transferred the company, so he's owning it already, but the father is still in the business and he's very dominant, very bossy. And on top of that, he's not even passionate about the business. There's even another family member involved in the business, and there are also a lot of fights going on because there is simply zero clear communication about who is responsible for what. Everybody feels like they're the CEO. And that's very problematic and very stressful. Another client, he's working already in the business for 3 years, but he hasn't taken over the business yet. Also, they never talked about expectations, and also it's not even clear yet that he will take over the business, so he still feels like he needs to prove himself. Also a weird position they're in. And then they have fights in the business, and this also then gets personal, very tricky. And a last example I want to share is 2 sisters actually. They're both involved in the business, also again of the father and the mother this time. And though the siblings, they're apart 2 years, I think, and they also have some toxic communication patterns already in their childhood. And this toxic communication pattern is also displaying in the business. And especially the younger sibling is suffering a lot from that. And they never resolved that, and exactly those childhood struggles they have are exactly again happening in the business. And that's also quite painful for everybody because it's extremely stressful. There's a lot of friction, a lot of pain, a lot of arguments and conflicts. And that's not great for them and for you, but also not great for the business. So basically what you need to know and need to understand is that what is happening right here, this transition from one generation to another one, is like a relay race. I hope I pronounce it properly. I'm not a native speaker. And you're basically giving the stick to the next person. And you've got to make sure that this is a smooth transition. And with transition, I don't mean that you need to decide, okay, from this day onwards, this and this changes. It can also be a transition over a longer period of time, but it simply needs to be communicated what is going to happen. So you need to have a proper and explicit communication about that. Maybe just between you and your parents or your father. Maybe there's also an additional mediator or moderator involved, some external person, a coach like me, but that's not always necessary. And what's also very important is that you guys talk about fears and emotions. I know some of you guys are not very passionate about doing that, but I think it's very important that you talk about also as a son or as a daughter, what are you afraid of? What are you worrying about when you take over the business? Also in the communication and interaction. Talk about that you're afraid maybe that you cannot really separate business from private properly, or that the father or the mother is still overprotective and you don't feel like you're actually taking over the business. You need to talk about that. And you need to talk about clear expectations. I think that's very crucial, very important. And I'm talking about expectations, fears, and worries from both sides. It's not just you're sharing your part. You also really proactively need to ask mom, dad, or whoever it is, what are your expectations? And also, what are you afraid of? And what do you think might go wrong? And what do you think how we can do this right? Very important, both sides. And then there needs to be this clear transition, and maybe at least also a separation of tasks at some point. And also this communication is not a one-time communication. It's something that happens over months and maybe even years. To always check in. At the beginning it's a little bit more of talking about how do we want to make this transition, what are the expectations. And later on it's going to be a little less and it's going to be more smooth. But again, don't do it post hoc. And after a year when everything is already going wrong, then, it's working, that can work. I've done that before as well, but it's more work, I would say. And there's much more stress. There's no stress. It's not necessary to be so stressed about all that if you do this right in the beginning. And then it can actually work out quite well. And I've seen people even developing their relationship with their father and mother, and it's flourishing even more because they're working together so well. It can be even a therapeutic process. If they notice, hey, we're working quite well together because we've been clear about how to do things and what are expectations, and we learned about how to communicate not only in the business but also in the private life, and they actually improve their relationship to their parents. Yeah, those are the big picture thoughts I had. But also, again, before you dive into taking over the business, the question is also whether to take over the business. And that's maybe, depending on the situation, also something you should discuss with your parents and go through the process of decision making with your parents together. Yeah. If you need some more personal advice or somebody simply to listen to reflect a little bit, to ask a couple of questions, sometimes it's not about finding the right answers, but finding the right questions. And if you need somebody to help you with that, or you're wondering whether you need somebody that might help you throughout this process, then I suggest that we're talking. There's a link below. You can sign up for a free call. We can get to know each other and understand what you need these days, what might help, and whether we are a good fit. That's what we can decide together. There's no strings attached, very easygoing. And we're also even going to work out a custom strategy, how this transition could look like for you, how you could approach, how you could actually go through such a communication process and have a smooth transition. And that will save you massive amounts of stress, tears, and sleepless nights, but also will probably make you guys much more money because you're working more effectively. So I hope I talk to you soon. Again, just sign up for a call. There's a link below. And I'll talk to you soon.